Have any of you read this before, prior to this class? One? Okay. Like Midsummer Night's Dream, you have two settings. Court. This time the wood is named Arden. Okay. Your introduction makes note of the fact that there was a forest of Arden there still is, near Stratford, where Shakespeare grew up, and his mother's maiden name is Arden. Okay? So, I mean, it's got to figure in some ways. Your introduction goes into quite a bit of detail about its source, Rosalind or Euphues' Golden Legacy by Thomas Lodge, and how Shakespeare modifies that source. So we're not going to talk about that very much. I do want to throw out for your possible consideration, though, that as you like it, obviously it's a much more serious play than Midsummer Night's Dream. In that serious has to do with the theme, possible theme, of, and I'm going to use several different terms to possibly describe this. Redemption, regeneration, restoration, reformation. They all have to do with the biblical idea of the old Adam either versus or becoming the new Adam. Okay? Which I think loomed kind of large in Shakespeare's creative imagination. Because he wrestles with this also, or maybe wrestling isn't the right word. He toys with this idea also in The Tempest. Okay? And to some extent in a couple of his other much later works. Winter's Tale, he does some of it. And Twelfth Night, also to a degree. Okay? So let's look at the dramatis personae and consider for just a moment the title. What's the title imply? Think of the titles of some of Shakespeare's plays. Midsummer Night's Dream, and what do we find out when we get to the very end of the play? It's a Midsummer Night's Dream. I mean, Puck says, think that all that you've seen is just a dream and it will have as much power as a dream does. You'll walk away, etc. Right? He has another one, it's really sticky. Another one titled, All's Well That Ends Well. What does that title imply? It'll end well. Everything will work out in the end. As you like it. How many of you have seen Princess Bride? Greatest movie ever made. Horrible adaptation of a book. Let me rephrase that. Best adaptation of a book into a film ever made. Because the book is horrible. The book is, man, it's a downer. Okay? Totally 1970s existential. Okay? What's Wesley's famous tagline? As you wish. As you like it is Wesley. As you wish. The play ultimately is if you like it. If you like it so. Okay? Or as Captain Picard used to say, make it so. If this is what you want, this is what you get. Okay? Now, there is one character for whom it is not as you like it. The character of Jacques that we will see. Okay, so we have our characters. Duke Senior, banished Duke. Duke Frederick, his usurping brother. There, right there, is a dynamic that Shakespeare loves to use. He uses it in comedies. He uses it in tragedies. He uses it in the romances. Okay, where you have a brother, younger brother, who takes the older brother's place and banishes the older brother. Rosalind, or Rosalind, depending on how you pronounce it, but in order to make it fit the rhyme in the play, it's Rosalind, if I'm remembering correctly. Rosalind, daughter of Duke Senior. Who's Duke Senior? Just think of the senior one. He's the senior Duke or king in Shakespeare's plays is always going to be the one to either be banished or killed. So Hamlet Senior, etc. So she's the daughter of the banished Duke, okay? Later disguised as Ganymede. Well, who's Ganymede? Greek mythology.
Cupbearer of Jove.
Yeah, Jove, and also Jove's kind of little plaything, okay? So she's going to dress as a boy or young man. And then we get Celia, daughter of Duke Frederick. So Celia, Rosalind, cousins, right? Because Duke Senior, Duke Frederick's the younger brother of Duke Senior. Rosalind, daughter of Duke Senior. Celia, daughter of Duke Frederick. Later disguised as Aliena or Aliena, alien, foreigner, okay? Then we get the sons of Sir Roland de Bois, not Du Bois, de Bois. Oliver, Jacques, Orlando. That's in order of birth. Oliver's the eldest son, Jacques is the middle son, and it's Jacques, it's not Jacques. Jacques, and Orlando, okay? So Orlando's the youngest. Then we have Amiens and another Jacques, okay? Lords attending Duke Senior. So because they're attending Duke Senior, they are also banished with him because they're attending him off in the forest. And then we have Le Beau, a courtier attending Duke. Why all the French names? Think of this and expand it a little bit. In France, you have the Ardennes forest. Okay? It's probable that Shakespeare uses this because that's the one that he grew up and his mother was named Arden, but that the family, historically, the family name could go back to that, okay? But it's not placed in any particular country, nationality, etc. But you do get an awful lot of French names. So you have Le Beau, a courtier attending Duke Frederick. You have Charles, a wrestler, also in the court of Duke Frederick. Then you have Adam, an aged servant of Oliver, and then Orlando. Dennis, servant of Oliver. Touchstone, clown or fool. A touchstone is what? It's something that always brings out another thing's qualities, kind of like a foil. Okay, it's usually used in relation to like magnetism. Something is metallic if what? If it's attracted by a magnet. Okay, so Corn, an old shepherd. Silvius, a young shepherd, who's in love with Phoebe, who comes next. Phoebe, a shepherdess. Notice who's not in love with anybody yet. That is, in terms of her description of the dramatis personae, she's going to fall in love with somebody, which is going to create some issues. William, a country youth in love with Audrey. Country youth, that's a nice kind of euphemistic way of saying a bumbling yokel, essentially. Audrey, a country wench. Wench doesn't mean, hooker, whore, slut, etc. It just means plain old country girl, okay? And then you have Sir Oliver Martext, a country vicar. Why the name Martext? What does that imply? someone who butchers words. Like in later playwright in the Restoration, who is it? Congreve, I think, who creates Mrs. Malaprop. Anybody know what a malapropism is? It's when you say one thing, but you intend to say something else. So you say, I delivered a euphemism at the guy's funeral, but you meant eulogy. Usually, when you say a malaprop, however, the malaprop kind of has a deeper thing that really undercuts what you were trying to say. It's almost the exact opposite. In Shakespeare's plays, Much Ado About Nothing, Dogberry, is great for malapropisms, okay? Bottom, as we saw in his little, I had a dream speech, what does he say? The ear hath not seen, that's a malaprop. The eye hath not heard, that's a malaprop, okay? And then you have Hymen, the god of marriage. By having the very fact that Hymen is listed, that tells you there's going to be a blessed marriage somewhere in this play. Hymen doesn't show up in any literature unless two people are going to get married and this God is going to be there to bless this marriage. So there's not going to be anything wrong with this marriage from that point on, okay? And then a bunch of other, lackeys, hangers-on, etc. So we enter with Orlando and Adam, where Oliver's house, Duke Frederick's court, and the forest of Arden. Those are the three scenes that are going to be we will have throughout the play. Okay? So Orlando comes in with Adam. Now who's Orlando again? He's the youngest son of Sir Roland de Bois. Sir Roland de Bois is dead as the play opens. And Orlando says, as I remember Adam, I should throw this out also. It's thought Shakespeare played the part of Old Adam. We don't know many parts that Shakespeare played. He didn't play the big major. He didn't play Lear. He didn't play Macbeth. He didn't play Othello. Okay? Those were Burbage and Edward Allen, if I remember correctly, and Kean. Shakespeare didn't play those major roles. He played more minor roles. Adam's a fairly minor role. Fairly minor in terms of number of lines he has, but they're pretty important lines. Okay? So, as I remember Adam, it was upon this fashion bequeathed me by will, but pour 1,000 crowns, and, as thou sayest, charge my brother on his blessing to breed me well. And there begins my sadness. So he tells us, one, his father's dead. How do we know? Bequeathed by will. Two, his brother has charge of him, or did at the time of his father's death. That implies that Oliver was of adult age and Orlando was not. So Orlando was a minor, Oliver was elder. My brother Jaques, he keeps at school, and we're not going to see the Jaques very much, okay? We're going to see the other Jaques, the Lord attending Duke Sr., quite a bit. In fact, he gets to deliver one of Shakespeare's most famous speeches, All the World's a Stage, etc. My brother Jaques, he keeps at school and report speaks goldenly of his prophet. That is, Jaques is acing all of his classes. He's doing wonderful. For my part, he, who's the he? He hasn't been named yet, but it's his older brother Oliver. For my part, he keeps me rustically at home, or, to speak more properly, stays me here at home unkept. So rustically and unkept. What do those two terms imply? The rude mechanicals, Bottom, Peter Quince, etc., they're also called rustics. Why? If something is rustic, if you're into rustic home decorating, rough. It's rough. It's not finished. It's not polished. So what is Orlando saying about himself. His dress, his behavior, his speech. It's rough. It's not fine. It's not refined. It's not polished. It's not upper class. In other words, I'm not what I ought to be as a son of Sir Roland de Bois. He's the son of a knight. He ought to be treated in a proper way according to that, social ranking. For call you that keeping for a gentleman of my birth? This term, which is really a metaphor, has in our society totally lost its meaning. It doesn't mean anything compared to what it used to mean. Reach back. What do you think it used to mean? Notice what he says, a gentleman of my birth. Family line. It has everything to do with lineage. You were born into gentlemanly status. You could become a gentleman through industriousness and money. Okay? Here's an example. Shakespeare's father was not born a gentleman. Shakespeare's father attempted, I think it was in the 1580s, let me rephrase that, he didn't attempt it, began to attempt to get a coat of arms. Why? Only gentlemen could have a coat of arms. If you had a coat of arms, that was public indication that you had now risen to that level of society. He had been mayor of Stratford. He'd been alderman in Stratford. He lost all of that. Okay? He pretty much went from the height of Stratford to the bottom of Stratford. Okay? But he attempted to get a coat of arms. Shakespeare, trying to remember the date, 1599, I think, maybe 1598, sometime between 1598 and 1602. Shakespeare actually is able to procure a coat of arms for his father, which also necessarily becomes Shakespeare's coat of arms because he's the eldest surviving son. Shakespeare did have a brother, okay, which then would also get passed down to any children, an eldest son that Shakespeare would have, okay? His eldest son died in the late 1590s. His only son died in the 1590s, so then it would devolve to his daughter. But this is entirely an indication of social class, and it's entirely, except for the few who were able to purchase it, entirely a matter of birth. So when he talks about a gentleman of my birth, he's talking about high social standing. Because in Shakespeare's day, if you, quote unquote, pretended to be a gentleman, if you tried to pass yourself off as a member of that class, for example, only gentlemen could wear a sword. Literally. Only a person of the gentleman class could have a sword around his waist. If you weren't a gentleman and you had one, you could be arrested. Because you're trying to pass yourself off as something you are not. It'd be like impersonating a cop today. You don't do that. Or impersonating a member of Congress or something like that. Okay? So, for call you that keeping for a gentleman of my birth that differs not from the stalling of an ox. Now, is Orlando being literal here? Does he live in a stable? Probably not literally, but he means my brother is treating me like an ox. He's giving me the accoutrements of an ox. He's being fed, maybe, not quite literally, but like an ox. Well, what do you feed an ox? What it needs. What it needs. not more. His horses are bred better. For besides that they are fair with their feeding, they are taught their manage. So they get the food they need, but they're taught their manage. That is, I was just talking about this idea in my previous class. They're taught how to behave. They're taught how to be controlled. What's he saying about his breeding at his brother's hand? What's he not been taught? Manners. He's not been taught the qualities of a gentleman. And that then goes back about at least 200 years before Shakespeare, probably more like 300, to the origination of the ideas of chivalry. Okay? How you treat women, how you treat others, how you treat equals, how you treat inferiors, etc. And to that end, riders dearly hired. That is, he hires riders who will treat his horses well and such. But I, his brother, gain nothing under him but growth. That is, he can't stop me from growing. I'm getting bigger. For the which his animals on his dunghills are as much bound to him as I. Besides this, nothing that he so plentifully gives me, that something that nature gave me, his countenance seems to take from me. Nature has given Orlando certain things, such as, what can a brother take or attempt to take from another brother that nature has given that brother? How about looks? How can you attempt to take a brother's good looks from him? I mean, you could physically, if you were really crazy, scar him up. I don't think he means that.
Well, he described himself as being rough, not being taken care of.
Slovenly. His hair isn't properly taken care of. If he has a beard, it's not well kept. His clothing, okay, all part of the mannerisms of being a gentleman. There's a famous portrait of John Donne, a contemporary of Shakespeare's, known as a romantic poet, not romantic like Wordsworth Coleridge, but romantic sex, okay, for some of them at least. And the portrait is of Donne around the age of 21 or so. Okay? Donne was a soldier by that time. He was well known by that time as a poet. People were paying him to write poems because he was so good. And there's this portrait that was done of him, and it's him, and he's kind of sitting in this chair, you know, with his hands kind of crossed like this. He's got a hat on. He's got his doublet and hose, and his doublet, which should move my beard out of the way. His doublet, which should be tied all the way up to the neck. His doublet is open. Think of 1970s, you know, idiot men who would big wide open lapels, all kinds of gold chains and stuff. Kind of like that. So it's open. His sleeves, which would have laces down at the bottom, not lace, but laces instead of buttons. The laces are all untied and the sleeves are loose, and his hands are kind of hanging there languidly. Okay? It's not an image of a gentleman. Why? Because he's not all tidied up. What it is an image of is lovesickness. He looks this way, the character, the portrait, looks this way because this is a poet of love. Why would a lover look like this? So preoccupied with the beloved. Can't even bother to dress himself properly. We're going to see the exact same thing in Hamlet. Ophelia is going to describe Hamlet like that image of John Donne. Okay? Kind of the idea here, but the idea here isn't that he's not dressed well because of some woman. He's not dressed well because his brother doesn't provide him with the kind of clothing he deserves. Okay? He lets me feed with his hinds, deer, bars me the place of a brother, and as much as in him lies, minds my gentility with my education, with all the power of his disposal, undermines my right to be educated as a gentleman. Your gloss tells you. Well, how would you be educated as a gentleman? Bare minimum, you would have gotten the education Shakespeare got. What we would consider grammar school, elementary school. He would have had that in Latin and Greek. Would have known Latin and Greek. But it'd be more than that. You'd be educated not only in the liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium, rhetoric, mathematics, music, philosophy, etc., geometry and such. You'd be educated in the fine arts and in the practical arts. So drawing would be something a gentleman would be educated in. Dancing, how to dance properly. Fighting. The quintessential courtier in Shakespeare's day was Sir Philip Sidney. Sidney died in 1589. Pretty sure it was 1589. At the young age of 21 or 23, he was wounded in a battle fighting for the Protestants against Catholics on the continent. But Sidney was described as the ideal knight. Why? By this time, he'd already written a long sonnet series called Astrophil and Stella. Astrophil, Astro, Brad Pitt has a movie out, Ad Astra, to the stars. Astro, star, Phil, lover, Astrophil, lover of stars, and Stella, star. So, star lover, star, okay? He'd written one of the greatest works in the English language in terms of defending poetry, not just poetry, defending literary production, called a defense of poetry, or a defense of poesy, as it's sometimes called. He'd also challenged Queen Elizabeth. Not a smart thing to do. And probably, possibly, simultaneously courted Queen Elizabeth. Okay? But she, because of his challenge to her, she froze him out. I mean, she literally banned him to the Midlands, where he could not be in London for a while. Okay? But then he goes off and he fights in the Netherlands and gets killed. Dies 21 days after being shot from gangrene. Okay? When he is buried, it's like a president's burial today, or a president's funeral today. Everybody comes out. People write poems, books are published, etc., celebrating Sir Philip Sidney. Why? He is the essential image of a gentleman. He's got all the qualities. Orlando's saying, I got zilch. My brother isn't teaching me any. So why is he complaining about this? He needs to know these things. Why? So he can interact with the world as a gentleman. This is it, Adam, that grieves me. And the spirit of my father, which I think is within me, begins to mutiny against this servitude. The spirit, he doesn't mean his literal, I'm being possessed by dad. He means the same kind of spirit that infused my father, that moves me too. And it moves me what? To mutiny. Mutiny. Well, go back to the top of the dramatis personae. Duke Senior, oldest brother, Duke Frederick, who did what? Usurped his older brother's position. Orlando introduces the idea of mutiny. So what do you do if you're on a ship, because usually it only applies in the Navy, and you mutiny against your captain? You replace him with the person beneath him. He's a parallel image between the two brothers who rule, and now these two. Okay? I will no longer endure it. Will, I desire, but it also implies here action. I'm going to stop it. Though yet I know no wise remedy how to avoid it. I know no wise remedy. don't know how yet to stop it. Oliver comes in. Adam. And Adam's supposed to be really old. Okay? So Oliver comes in. And Adam says, "Yonder comes my master, your brother." Why? Ixnay on the udime, just stop talking udime in front of your brother. "Go apart, Adam, thou shalt hear how he will shake me up." Adam stands aside. Oliver. "Now, sir, what make you here?" Hold on just a second. Do I have that? Yes. "Now, sir, what make you here?" Get off of there. Orlando. "Nothing. I'm not taught to make anything." "You haven't taught me anything. How am I going to make... What mar you then?" "Marry, sir, I'm helping you to mar that which God made." Okay, so if you can't make anything, then what can you mar? Unmake, destroy. He says, I'm unmaking the very thing that God made. What's that? Me. How? By not being taught how to improve, develop, reform me. Reform. Make anew. "A poor unworthy brother of yours with idleness. Marry, sir, be better employed, and be not a while." Why did you keep calling him sir? He's his younger brother. My older brother never called me sir. Still doesn't. Be nice every once in a while, but not going to happen. Oliver. "Know you where you are, sir?" "Oh, sir, very well. Here in your orchard." Okay, now notice they keep referring to themselves with the Y pronouns. You and your. Okay? Oliver. "Know you before whom, sir?" Do you know who you are before that is in front of? "I, better than him I am before knows me." Yes. I know who you are better than you know who I am. That's a threat. He's saying, watch your back. "I know you are my eldest brother, and in the gentle condition of blood you should so know me." Gentle condition, as we are both gentlemen, we are both in the condition of gentles. Remember at the end of Midsummer Night's Dream, what did Puck say? Now, gentles, equating everybody in the upper class and the lower class. Dangerous, by the way. That was a subversive act, I think, on Shakespeare's part. Okay? Condition of blood, you should so know me. The courtesy of nations allows you my better. That is, the laws, the custom, the mores of nations says, because you are the elder, okay, you are my better, in that you are the firstborn. But the same tradition takes not away my blood. Were there 20 brothers betwixt us? The same laws, the same mores, the same traditions say, you are not more a Dubois than I am. We are equal in that. I have as much of my Father in me as you, albeit I confess your coming before me is nearer to his reverence. Nearer to just means you're closer in that you were firstborn. What, boy? And he smacks him. Why? Don't be impertinent with me. Notice he calls him boy. Shakespeare loves to do that in some of his plays. When he really wants a character to put another character down, he calls him boy. Okay? Julius Caesar. At one point in Julius Caesar, wait, is it Julius Caesar? No, Antony and Cleopatra. In Antony and Cleopatra, at one point, Mark Antony sends word to Caesar. Okay, bear in mind in that play, Antony and Caesar at odds. And sends word to him and calls him boy. And Caesar goes, he called me boy. I mean, he's really angry. Well, Caesar in that play is just a young boy, pretty much. I mean, he's late teens, okay? So, come, elder brother, you are too young in this. And what does he do? First of all, he grabs him by the throat. And he says, you are too young in this. What? What does he mean you are too young? You are not accomplished in what he's just done. So what has he just done? He smacks his little brother. Little brother is saying, I know how to fight better than you do. I'm older than you in fighting, not the arts of fighting. He just means raw physical power. Okay? Wilt thou lay hands on me? We get the first TH form. Villain. I am no villain. I am the youngest son of Sir Roland de Bois. He was my father. He is thrice a villain that says such a father begot villains. Wert thou. So Oliver calls Orlando thou, and then Orlando calls Oliver thou. Why is this important? Because the Y forms, I've written it down because I always get these mixed up. The Y forms of the personal pronouns, you, ye, your, are used to indicate a couple of things. One, politeness, formality, and to address a superior. Okay? That superior can be a familial superior or a social superior. So you would use the Y form to address, for example, a member of society who is of a higher standing, higher class than you are. If we were to still do this today, theoretically, well, let me put it this way. My opinion. Could be wrong, you don't have to agree with it. Members of Congress would say that we should use this, we non-members of Congress, should use this to respond to them. Why? Because in too many of their minds, they are above us in status. Okay? So, these are the Y forms. You, ye, and your. The H forms, thou, thee, thy, thine. Thine is only used in specific occurrences. I'll tell you why in a second. Okay? Are used by older to younger people. All right? Used by socially superior to inferior individuals. And used among those who are intimately familiar. Intimate not meaning sex, meaning like family members. Okay? So think about these for a moment and think of something like the King James Bible, if you're at all familiar with it. I'm teaching, of course, my previous course is the Bible was literature, Bible and literature, something like that. Right? Apostles come to Christ and they say, Lord, teach us how to pray like John the Baptist taught his disciples how to pray. And he says, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be. Notice, almost all of you said thy name. Well, in the King James, that's what it is. Modern English translations, holy be you, or some weird thing. Or hallowed be your name. Well, what's the difference? This and this. Thy, die. Socially superior to inferior is putting yourself above God. Okay, Satan. What else? Older to younger. Nope. God's older than most of us. Intimately familiar. Okay. Why? Abba. That's what father means. What's Abba in modern American English baby speak? Daddy. That's close, right? It's really close. Okay. If you're doing it this form, it'd be like, oh, high, great, exalted one in the heavens. You know, oh, great sky father. Okay, Jupiter. That's what Jupiter means, sky father. All right? So, what's Shakespeare doing here? Because up until this point, they've been using totally this. What are they emphasizing? Not this. Because Orlando uses this to address his brother. He's not, excuse me, Oliver uses it to address Orlando. He's not addressing him as a superior. What's he doing? He's being polite. He's being formal. What does it mean when you are formal? You're sticking by the rules, but what else are you doing? Right as if you were in a quote-unquote formal situation. You might have heard professors tell you before in papers. That means, if you're taking it literally, no contractions, isn't, aren't, don't use them. Lawyers in training are taught, don't use contractions. Even though, my son's in law school, even though many Supreme Court justices love using contractions in their formal writings from the bench, you know, when they write majority opinions and such, okay? So they're doing this, and then it switches to the TH form. Why? Okay? Well, when Oliver does it, what's he doing? He's talking down to little brother. It's almost like he could say, thou little brother, get back in your place, okay? Socially superior to inferior, he's emphasizing that. But there's also a little bit of this. Notice, this one has a certain richness to it, okay? Shakespeare, I haven't mentioned it in previous, I don't think I have in previous plays. Shakespeare does this in almost all of his plays. Why? He uses it not all the time, but in certain scenes, he will go back and forth between the two forms. He's doing that as linguistic cues to help us understand the character's motivations. Okay? So, Orlando finishes, wert thou not my brother? Okay? So, older to younger? Nope. Intimately familiar? Yeah. This socially superior can also be morally superior to an inferior. Orlando is also suggesting there, I'm on the moral high ground. You're a slime. Okay? Wert thou not my brother, I would not take this hand from thy throat till this other had pulled out thy tongue for saying so. Thou hast railed on thyself. Sweet masters, be patient, Adam. For why does Adam use your? He's a servant. Notice, he's following all the protocols. Okay? Even though age-wise he's superior. And age-wise they should do what? Respect your elders. Oliver, let me go. I will not till I please. You shall hear me. There he's addressing his superior. You will hear me. My father charged you. He's also doing what? By emphasizing these two, he's de-emphasizing this. He's de-emphasizing family relationship. Even though he's talking about their father, he's indicating the breach in the family. All right? So, they go back and forth. Oliver, yeah, what are you going to do about it? I mean, that's what line 72 means. And what wilt thou do? Beg when that is spent? Well, get you in. I will not long be troubled with you. You shall have some part of your will. I pray you leave me. That kind of implies, fine, I'll give you inheritance. You can be like the prodigal son. Go off and live with the pigs. But you're not getting anything else. Okay? So, Charles comes in with others. And what do we see discussed? What does Oliver plot against his little brother? He's going to have him wrestle against Charles. Charles, what kind of implied, is a big guy. Oliver, line 130. I thank thee for thy love to me, which thou shalt find I will most kindly requite. I had myself notice of my brother's purpose herein, and I have by underhand means, labored to dissuade him from it, but he is resolute. I'll tell thee, Charles, blah, 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 blah. But if you wrestle with him, you can do what? Kill him. But it won't be intentional. It'll be part of the wrestling. Okay? 1, 2. Go away. Rosalind and Celia come in. It's our first introduction to them. Okay? Celia, I pray thee, Rosalind. Why is she addressing her with the thee? They're cousins. Is it because she's older? No. They are intimately familiar. They are close. This indicates their relationship is very tight. Thou lovest me not with the full weight that I love thee. If that my uncle, thy banished father, had banished thy uncle, the duke, my father, so, okay. Well, I will forget the condition of my state to rejoice in yours. So, Celia calls her thee. Rosalind calls Celia your. Why? Well, there is a bit of tension in this relationship. Tension caused by what? By Celia? No. By Celia's father. Celia's father banished Rosalind's father. That's got to create some wrinkles. Okay? She is also now addressing a superior. Because Celia's father is the new duke. And Rosalind's father is banished. He's a nobody. She has no social standing, really, anymore. Okay? So, they kind of decide, what are we going to do? Rosalind, what shall be our sport? Celia, let us sit and mock the good, this is line 30, the good housewife fortune from her wheel. And there's that idea, I think we talked about before, a fortune's wheel, which is always spinning, that her gifts may henceforth be bestowed equally. Let's mock fortune so that she will, what? Balance things out. I wish we could, for her benefits are mightily displaced. Now, I'm not saying that Rosalind is suggesting this, but she might be suggesting, and I would be above you socially, and you would be calling me you, and I would be calling you thou. 'Tis true, Celia says. For those that she makes fair, she scarce makes honest. Shakespeare loves this idea. Those that fortune makes beautiful, that's what fair means, aren't honest. A pretty face is always hiding something sinister within. I mean, he really goes into this in the sonnets. And for those that she makes honest, she does what? She makes ill-favoredly ugly. Take that down to brass tacks. If you're a man, you can trust an ugly woman. Why? Because she doesn't have any ulterior motives. She knows she's ugly. She's not going to, quote unquote, get you. But if it's a beautiful woman, she might be trying to entice you. It's the old Eve, focus. Okay? Rosalind, no. You're wrong there. Now thou goest from fortune's office to nature's. She says, fortune's not the one who makes one fair or foul. That's nature. The goddess nature does that. Fortune reigns in gifts of the world. Fortune reigns in what you get out of life. Whether you were born in the gentleman rank or the slob rank or the royal rank. Nature determines how you look. Okay? So a touchstone comes in. And touchstones comes to bring message. He hears them talking about fortune and nature and such. And touchstone says, let's see here. Yeah, line 65, about 68. Rosalind says, we're on 65. Unmuzzle your wisdom. Unmuzzle. What's a muzzle? It's a thing you put on an animal to shut it up. Do you use muzzles on people? No, you don't. So what's she saying about touchstone? She's implying something about some level, at least, of inhumanity in him. Why? Well, he's a fool. He doesn't speak wisdom, so she says, let it out. Unmuzzle, open your mouth. You muzzle an ox, you muzzle a donkey, you muzzle a cow. So let whatever's in out. Stand you both forth now, stroke your chins, and swear by your beards that I'm a knave. They're women. Most women, I know some do, most women don't have beards. So stand forth, stroke your beards, and swear I am a knave. By our beards, if we had them, thou art. Okay? Because notice, they're supposed to swear by their beards. So if they're swearing by something they don't have, how valid is that oath? Well, it's not. So, if we had beards, you would be a knave. We don't have beards, the implication is you're not a knave. See, in Shakespeare, often, the fools are the real truth tellers. Why? Because I think Shakespeare is drawing upon the idea from the Middle Ages. Actually, it goes back to the early Christian period and later. The idea of the holy fool. The individual who is touched by God, who sees things that the rest of us don't see. See, in the Middle Ages in England, you didn't do bad things to fools because you thought God literally touched that person and kind of opened his or her eyes. Okay? So kings, dukes, etc. would employ fools to kind of just be around and spout their foolishness. Maybe there'd be some hidden wisdom there. Okay? So, by my knavery, if I had it, if I were a knave, then I were. But if you swear by that, that is not, which is their beards, that is not forsworn. That is, then you haven't really sworn. No more was this knight, swearing by his honor, for he never had any. What knight? Celia, who are you talking about? What knight? One that old Frederick, your father, loves. My father's love is enough to honor him enough. Speak no more of him. You'll be whipped for taxation. The more pity that fools may not speak wisely, what wise men do foolishly. See? That's truth. Listen to that again. The more pity that fools may not speak wisely, may not speak what? That which wise men do foolishly. Frederick, who's a duke now, should act how? Wisely. Okay? Here's an example. Modern day. Very modern day. Like in the last day or two. Okay? Even Trump's ardent supporters say what about his conversation with the president of Ukraine? You probably shouldn't have brought up Biden. It's okay to talk about all the other stuff, but you shouldn't mention him by name. It's okay to say, I need you to help me with this investigation into possible wrongdoing prior to the 2016 election. And drop it at that. But you mentioned Biden, you mentioned his son, and it sounds like what? Something nefarious. Okay? Wise men acting, well, I think a lot of people wouldn't accuse Trump of wisdom. Point taken. You get the idea. Okay? I'll stop while I'm not ahead anymore. 10:39. Okay, so go on. They keep talking. Duke Frederick comes in with LeBeau and such, and then Orlando comes in. I'm skipping a bit. Orlando comes in, it's page 302, and let's see here. Orlando says he's going to challenge, or he's going to fight, wrestle Charles. She asks him, 160 or so, have you challenged Charles the wrestler? He says, no. He is the general challenger. That is, Charles has done what? Come one, come all, take your shot at me. So he's the challenger. He says, I'm gonna try. Why?
Try to loop in his brother to do the same at a prime.
Okay. Why else possibly? What else does he have to lose? I mean, this could be his way out. This could be his winnings so that he could get out under the thumb of his brother. I mean, Orlando's kind of the mindset by this point, if I die, I die, you know? What do I have to live for? Because he's treated like an ox, he says. Rosalind, 172. Your reputation shall not therefore be misprized. We will make it our suit to the Duke that the wrestling might not go. We don't want you to do this. Seemingly, it's because she looks at Orlando and goes, what a waste of a hunk of a young man. We're not really given any other indication. Orlando, no. I beseech you, punish me not with your hard thoughts, wherein I confess me much guilty to deny so fair and excellent ladies anything. And he kind of stands there and goes, and you're pretty nice yourself. But let your fair eyes and gentle wishes go with me to my trial. In other words, rather than try to get me out of it, pray for me that I'm successful. Wherein if I be foiled, there is but one shamed that was never gracious. If killed, but one dead that's willing to be so. No skin off my back. If I die, I die. I don't have really anything to live for. I shall do my friends no wrong, for I have none to lament me. Why doesn't he have any friends? Because his brother keeps him locked up. Almost a male Cinderella theme going on. Okay? Or as my wife, I think, once did, a Cinderfella thing. Okay? So, the world no injury, for in it I have nothing. Only in the world I fill up a place which may be better supplied when I have made it empty. Boy, I never thought about that. Because she's so well read, I really wonder if J.K. Rowling, if this was kicking around in the back of her mind when she's writing book 7 of the Harry Potter series, and she has Dudley say that he doesn't think Harry is a waste of space. What did Orlando just say? He essentially says, I'm taking up dead space. I would fill up a place which may be better supplied when I have made it empty. Someone else can come take my spot. She says, no. Okay? Orlando and Charles wrestle. Charles is thrown. Duke Frederick calls it off, or stops it. No more, no more. And Orlando, yes, I beseech you. In other words, don't stop us now. Let us keep going. I am not yell breathed. In other words, I haven't even broken out a sweat. So what does it tell us about Orlando versus Charles? Charles is a professional wrestler. Orlando might not have grown up learning the arts of being a gentleman, but when he says, the only thing my brother can't stop is my growing in size, he's buff. Okay? Yeah, or he's a big boy. How dost thou, Charles? LeBeau, he cannot speak, my lord. He's down for the count. Charles is borne out. Orlando, my liege, the youngest son of Sir Roland de Bois. So he kind of, goes, bows down to him. I would thou hadst been son to some man else, the world esteemed thy father honorable, but I did find him still mine enemy. Still. Here's that adverb again. It means always, continuously. I never liked your father. And what always happens when someone doesn't like someone's father? That means I don't like you either. And if you have children, I'm not going to like them either. Thou shouldst have better pleased me with this deed, hadst thou descended from another house. Fancy words for saying, I don't like this. But fare thee well, thou art a gallant youth. I would thou hadst told me of another father. Fare thee well, go away. I don't want to see you anymore. So Celia and Rosalind talk about what they've just seen and overheard. And she says, Celia to Rosalind, 232, Sir, you have well deserved, to both Rosalind and Orlando, you have well deserved, but if you do keep your promises in love, but justly as you have exceeded all promise, your mistress shall be happy. He doesn't have a mistress. She gives him a chain. Okay, so Shakespeare's day in the Middle Ages, when a woman gives a man something like that, it almost automatically indicates a love token. If you saw, for example, A Knight's Tale, the love interest for William Thatcher, can't remember her name, she does what at one of the jousts? Drops her handkerchief. And he's like, I will pick that up for you. And the other guy, the bad guy, defeats him, picks it up on the end of his lance and rides up to her. She's like, because she doesn't want it from him. She wants it from Heath Ledger's character. Okay? So she takes this chain off. Gentlemen, wear this for me. What did she just call him? Gentleman. Well, by birth, he is. By bearing, little rough. Wear this for me, one out of suits with fortune. Well, remember, she and Celia were just talking about fortune. And what she means is, where on fortune's wheel is Orlando right now? Yeah, if he's not on the bottom, he's getting really close to it. That could give more, but that her hand lacks means. I could give you more than this if I had the ability. What? I would give you more. Why is she unable to? Because her father's been banished. She says to Celia, shall we go, cuz? Aye, aye, very well. Orlando, can I not say, I thank you? Notice, it's an aside. So when he says, can I not thank you? Rosalind doesn't go, what? What's that? It's spoken out here to the audience. Only the audience knows that. Can I not thank you? My better parts are all thrown down, and that which here stands up is but a quintain, a mere lifeless block. And you've got a footnote. A wooden figure used as a target in tilting. What's he mean? His better parts are all thrown down. She has unmanned him, so to speak. He's kind of, he doesn't, he's without words. Rosalind to Celia, he calls us back. She hears something She doesn't hear his exact words because it's an aside. My pride fell with my fortunes. I'll ask him what he would. Would there means what he desired. What is it you want, young man? Did you call, sir? You have wrestled well and overthrown more than your enemies. Ah, Orlando. She's been overthrown. And yeah, there's all kinds of sexual innuendo with overthrown. She's saying, I am metaphorically, I'm on my back. You have me. Okay? I don't think even if she were to say those words, Orlando would pick up on it. Because he's not been she's the tart. He's not been taught in the arts of gentlemanship, gentlemanliness. He's not been taught the art of the dance. I don't mean physical dancing. I mean the male-female dance. Okay? How to woo, etc. He's not seen Hitch, in other words. Okay? Modern day, updating of it. Celia, will you go, cuz? In other words, come on, let's get out of here. Rosalind's like, not till he leaves, Have with you, fare you well, Orlando. What passion hangs these weights upon my tongue? Remember what Theseus said about sometimes happened when he would go places and messengers would have these great speeches prepared and they couldn't speak? Why? Smitten. Cupid between the eyes, or maybe more to fit the image, in the mouth, shot his tongue. I cannot speak to her, yet she urged conference. She came and talked to him, and he's like, oh, poor Orlando, thou art. Okay, so they're now each overthrown. But one's overthrown lying down over here, one's overthrown lying down over here, and neither knows the other has been overthrown. Immediately, there's a problem there, right? What did Puck say when he removed the juice from Lysander's eyes? Jack will have his Jill. These two are going to get together. Okay? So LeBeau comes in and he tells Orlando, if I were you, I would get out of here. The Duke's not happy. Why are you telling me this? Which of the two was the daughter of the Duke that here was at the wrestling? Neither was his daughter, if we judge by manners. But yet indeed the taller is his daughter. Okay? The other is daughter to the banished Duke. I think in every production I've seen of this play, Rosalind is taller than Celia. But Celia should be the taller of the two. To keep his daughter company, whose loves are dearer than the natural bond of sisterhood, I can tell you that of late this Duke hath ta'en displeasure against his gentle niece. And what's LeBeau saying? He's about to banish the niece too. Okay? So fare you well hereafter in a better world than this. Lines 274 and following. Hereafter in a better world than this, I shall desire more love and knowledge of you. More love and knowledge of you. Why in a better world? In what better world? Is he talking about death or in heaven? In heaven, I shall have a better love and knowledge of you. After all, Paul says in Corinthians, 2nd, I believe, there we shall know as we are known. Now we see but through a glass darkly. This is 1 Corinthians 15. Then we shall see clearly. Is he alluding to that? Possibly. But what else is that indicative of? It's this idea. Okay? But if there's a better world, then what's he saying about this world?
It needs to change.
It needs to be fixed. And this world is the court. Civilization, society, laws, rules, orders, just like we saw with Athens. Okay? And it was a commonplace in Shakespeare's day. Shakespeare isn't the only one who does this. John Donne does it in several of his poems. It was a commonplace to show the rot at the center of court. Okay? But you had to do it very carefully, because what, literally, is at the center of court? Whoever the monarch is. And Queen Elizabeth she was brilliant. She was arguing with philosophers and such when she was in her teens, like 14, 15. She translated works from Latin. She was one of the few people to translate Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. That's one of the nice thing about that text. We can look at it in the Latin. We can look at it in Old English. We can look at it in Middle English. We can look at it in early modern English and see how all these different audiences kind of understood and wrestled with that text. Okay. So Queen Elizabeth, if you start attacking the court, you gotta be subtle about it, because it's her court. Everything radiates outward from her. Right? So, 1-3, Rosalind and Celia enter in. Okay? And what are they talking about? Well, they talk about the stuff from Celia's father, and Rosalind starts to pun. Celia says, line 18. Let me go back a second. Let me go back. Line 13. Line 11. Because I need to get the beginning of where the pun actually starts. Celia says, line 10, is all this for your father? That is, you seem out of sorts. Is it because of what's happened to your father? Her father being the banished duke? No, some of it is for my child's father. What? She doesn't have any children. That's the point. Some of it is for the man who will become my child's father. Oh, how full of briars is this working day world. She's talking about Orlando. She's already, putting things in motion in her mind. Okay? Celia, they are but burrs. What are burrs? The briars in this working day world. What's meant by working day world? Another place, Shakespeare uses the phrase the hurly-burly. Everyday stuff we go through. As opposed to what other world? Oh, I don't know. A better world, like LeBeau was talking about, that isn't full of briars and thorns. Adam, Eden, paradise. No thorns, no briars, no weeping, sorrowing, sighing, etc. They are but burrs, cousin, thrown upon thee in holiday foolery. So if these are burrs thrown upon thee, they're sticking to her, right? Our dogs, especially my daughters, little miniature dachshund, will run out into the woods and just come back covered in burrs. And you got to sit there and pull them out one. These things from everyday working world, they're just sticking to you. She says they're just designed to kind of be like gnats, just to bug you. If we walk not in the trodden paths, our very petticoats will catch them. If we go off the beaten path, if we don't walk where we're supposed to walk, then yeah, you have to expect to get burrs. What's she saying? Behave properly, follow the laws, do good, and you won't have any problems. In other words, you won't need redemption, regeneration, restoration, reformation. Because you'll be clean, essentially. Oh, I could shake them off my coat. These burrs are in my heart. Okay? Hem them away. Cut them off. I would try if I could cry him and have him. Samuel Johnson, 18th century poet, philosopher, literary critic, one of the great literary critics of all time. appreciated, liked Shakespeare, but he also had a problem with Shakespeare. Because he said Shakespeare never met a pun he didn't like. If he could pun on something. Tale. This is the end of my tale, and, well, is it the end of this tale, or is it the end of this tale, the backside? Shakespeare would pun on that regularly. So here he's punning on him. Is one him? Not in Shakespeare's day, and not as it would be pronounced on the stage when you're speaking quickly. Come, wrestle with thy affections. Control yourself, woman, Celia is saying to another woman. Oh, they take the part of a better wrestler than myself. I can't wrestle those. Oh, have a good wish upon you. You will try in time in despite of a fall. You will try, that is test, in despite, no matter being thrown over. But turning these jests out of service, let us talk in good earnest. Is it possible, on such a sudden, you should fall, notice the language of falling, into so strong a liking with old Sir Rowland, youngest son? The Duke, my father, loved his father dearly. Duke Senior loved Sir Rowland de Bois. Not homosexually, loved him as a courtier, as a knight and such. Celia. So, doth it therefore ensue that you should love his son dearly? Because if that's your basis for loving him, then really, who should you love? Oliver, the oldest son. Because then you still love Sir Rowland, but what else? You get the heir. Because Oliver's going to get everything. By this kind of chase, I should hate him. I should hate young Orlando. Why? Because my father hated his father. Yet I hate not Orlando. No, hate him not. Why should I not? Doth he not deserve well? And Frederick comes in. And what's he do? He banishes Rosalind. 10 days. You got 10 days. And if you're within 20 miles, you die. So you have to go 20 miles away from the court, the city, any direction. And if you come within 19 miles, or within that 20-mile border, there won't be a trial. It's just, you're dead. She's like, why? What did I do? Never so much as in the thought unborn did I offend your highness. Thus do all traitors. You're a traitor. Prove it. You're a traitor. That's my proof. I'm the monarch. What I say goes. Tell me where the likelihood depends. Thou art thy father's daughter. That's enough. She says, I was when you took his dukedom. Didn't kick me out then. What's changed? Celia, Dad, let me speak. If she be a traitor, why, line 70, so am I. If you're going to accuse Rosalind of being a traitor, I'm one too. We have slept together, that is, in the same bed. Rose at an instant, learned, played, eat together, and wheresoever we went, like Juno Swan, still we went coupled and inseparable. Now, part of what she's talking about there is their education together as gentlewomen. They've been trained just like a gentleman would be trained. She is too subtle for thee. What has he just said about his own daughter? You're stupid, Celia. You don't see through Rosalind. Her smoothness, her very silence, and her patience do what? Think Henry IV. They speak to the people, and they pity her. Notice, she doesn't say a word. And for him, that's speech. What kind of speech? Banished speech. That is illegal speech. By not saying anything, she's saying too much. And the people go, oh, poor Rosalind, look at her. Thou art a fool. She robs thee of thy name, and thou wilt show more bright and seem more virtuous when she is gone. Is that like what Hal says? It's some of the same language. I will be more bright when what? When what though? When I cast off this contagion. Who's the contagion? Falstaff, Pedo, Bardolph, Pons. What's he saying? Honey, you're a 35-watt bulb in a 100-watt box. Remove the 100 watts, and you'll be the brightest bulb in the box. A 70 IQ compared to a 130, take the 130 out, and you're still a 70. But you'll be the only 70 people see. Okay? Oh, don't say anything. Firm and irrevocable is my doom, which I have passed upon her. She is banished. Celia said, you banish her, you banish me. You are a fool. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Okay? So the Duke leaves. And and we'll stop here, only one act. What do Rosalind and Celia agree to do? They're going to run away. How?
They're going to disguise themselves.
They're going to put on their disguises. Rosalind's going to go as Ganymede, which is male. Celia is going to go as Eliana, female. Okay, so a male and female running off into the woods. And frivolity will ensue. All right, we will pick up with 2-1 on Tuesday. Probably won't finish on Tuesday.
Sir, I apologize that I wasn't able